The first time Maribel told the doctor I was having an episode, I was sitting right there. I remember it because she didn't look at me when she said it. She smiled at Dr. Frost instead, soft and apologetic, like she was asking forgiveness for something I couldn't control. "He gets like this when he's overwhelmed," Maribel said. "It's confusing. He doesn't always realize it's happening." I opened my mouth to speak, then stopped, not because I was confused, but because the room shifted in a way I didn't understand yet. Dr. Frost nodded slowly, typing something into the chart. The clicking of the keyboard felt louder than it should have. "I'm right here," I said. My voice sounded normal to me. Steady. "I'm not confused. I just disagree." Maribel finally turned toward me. Her hand landed on my forearm. Light, but firm, like a reminder. "Julian," she said gently, "the way you talk to someone who's already losing a thread. You're making yourself anxious." Dr. Frost didn't ask me to explain. She didn't ask Maribel to step out. She just kept typing. That was the moment something changed, even though I didn't know what it was yet. Not a dramatic snap, more like a quiet reassignment of authority. The room had decided who was reliable, and it wasn't me. On the drive home, Maribel was calm. She always was after appointments. Like she'd completed a task. "You did okay in there," she said. "I know it's frustrating when you don't remember things clearly." "I remember everything," I said. She smiled, eyes on the road. "That's what makes it hard." At home, Maribel laid out my evening pills in the little plastic organizer she kept by the sink. Morning, afternoon, night. I watched her hands as she worked, noticed how practiced the motions were, how she never hesitated. "Did Dr. Frost change the dosage?" I asked. Maribel didn't look up. "Just a small adjustment, to help with the agitation." "I'm not agitated." She paused, just long enough for it to feel intentional. "Julian, this is what I mean. I took the pills because that's what I'd been doing for months, maybe longer." Time had started to blur in ways that were hard to pin down. Not blank spaces exactly, more like moments that slid past without edges. I hated that part. I hated that sometimes I'd be halfway through a sentence and forget how I'd started it. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan while my thoughts slowed into something thick and heavy. Not sleep. Something close to it, but wrong. The next morning, Maribel told me I'd had a rough night. "You were really restless," she said, handing me my coffee. "You kept asking the same questions." I frowned. "What questions?" She shrugged. "Little things. Where you were. What day it was. That doesn't sound like me." She gave me that look again. Patient. Sad. Like she was already grieving a version of me I didn't recognize. "It is lately." I started noticing how often she spoke for me after that. Not just with doctors, with the home health coordinator, with my sister on the phone, even with delivery drivers. "He can't come to the door right now," she'd say. "He's not feeling oriented." I'd be sitting 10 feet away, perfectly aware of where I was. When I pushed back, she'd sigh. When I insisted, she'd write things down. I didn't see the notes, but I saw what they did. Conversations changed. People spoke more slowly. Confirmed things with her instead of me. Once, I caught a glimpse of a form on the kitchen counter. My name at the top. A checklist underneath. Boxes marked with neat little X's. Difficulty regulating emotions. Impaired judgment under stress. Requires assistance with daily decisions. I picked it up, my heart pounding. "What is this?" Maribel took it from me gently, like I was holding something sharp. "Care coordination paperwork. You weren't supposed to worry about it." "I don't agree with any of this." She looked genuinely surprised. "That's not how it works, Julian." That sentence stayed with me. The fog got worse after that. Some afternoons, I'd lose hours. I'd wake up on the couch with the TV playing something I didn't remember turning on. My phone would be on the charger with no record of the texts Maribel said I'd sent. "You asked me to handle it," she'd say. "You didn't want to deal with it." I started apologizing for things I didn't remember doing. It was easier than arguing. Every disagreement seemed to turn into proof of something. Dr. Frost adjusted my medication again. "This should smooth things out," she said, smiling reassuringly at Maribel. I tried to explain what the fog felt like, how it wasn't confusion so much as distance. Like my own thoughts were happening behind glass. Maribel squeezed my hand. "He has trouble describing it." Dr. Frost nodded. "That's common." On the way out, I caught my reflection in the glass door. I looked the same, maybe a little thinner, tired, but not broken, not incapable. At least, I didn't think so. The realization didn't hit me all at once. It came in pieces. A missing email. A conversation Maribel referenced that I knew hadn't happened. A prescription refill notification I didn't recognize. Then one morning, while she was in the shower, my phone buzzed. "Your prescription is ready for pickup." It was a medication I didn't remember discussing. A higher dosage than I'd ever taken. Approved under my name. I sat on the edge of the bed, heart racing, trying to decide whether this was another gap in my memory or something else entirely. When Maribel came out, towel wrapped around her hair, I held up the phone. "What's this?" She glanced at the screen and didn't miss a beat. "Oh, that's the adjustment Dr. Frost mentioned. You were really out of it yesterday." I searched her face for hesitation. There was none. "I don't remember agreeing to that," I said. She tilted her head, studying me. "Julian," she said softly, "this is what we talked about. The word we landed wrong. For the first time, I didn't argue." I nodded. Let her think it worked. But something inside me stayed awake. That night, after she went to bed, I opened my laptop and started looking for anything I could still access without asking permission. My own records, my own history. I wasn't trying to prove anything yet. I just needed to know whether I was actually losing my mind. What I found didn't make sense. And for the first time in months, the fear I felt wasn't about my health. It was about Maribel. The medication schedule stopped feeling temporary. Maribel never missed a dose. Timers went off. Pills were counted twice. If I hesitated, she'd remind me how hard the last episode had been. The fog crept in earlier each day. Mornings slowed. Afternoons dulled. I caught myself losing words mid-sentence, like my thoughts were arriving late. At Redwood Valley Health Network, questions were directed at Maribel first. When I answered, people waited for her to confirm it. Once, I tried an experiment. A small one. A nurse asked how my sleep had been. I answered carefully, choosing words I was sure about. "I wake up a lot, but I know where I am." There was a pause. Maribel smiled. "He wakes up confused and anxious." The nurse nodded and typed. I didn't correct it. I just watched the sentence become official. At home, Maribel started deciding things before I could. Meals, emails, appointments. "You asked me to handle it," she said whenever I objected. I wasn't sure anymore if that was true. Dr. Frost adjusted my medication again. "This should smooth things out," she said. Maribel squeezed my hand. "See? It's helping." In the car, Maribel looked relieved. "You did great in there," she said. "No agitation." I stared out the window, watching familiar streets slide past like they belonged to someone else. That was when I realized something small but unsettling. I wasn't being medicated because I was unstable. I was being medicated so I wouldn't interrupt the story being told about me. And for the first time since this started, I understood that staying quiet wasn't keeping me safe. It was making me easier to manage. The first thing I noticed was how often Maribel checked the mail before I did. She didn't hide it. She just made it routine. Bills, appointment summaries, pharmacy notices, everything passed through her hands first. When I asked about something specific, she'd bring it to me already opened, already explained. "You didn't want to deal with it," she'd say. One afternoon, while she was on the phone in the other room, I checked the kitchen counter. A prescription receipt was folded beneath a grocery list. I recognized my name, the pharmacy, the date. I didn't recognize the dosage. Later, I asked casually, "Did the pharmacy mess something up?" Maribel didn't hesitate. No, that's correct. It seems higher. She looked at me for a long moment. Julian, we went over this. I let it drop, but I started paying attention. Refill notifications showed up closer together than they should have. Medications overlapped in ways that didn't match the schedule taped inside the cabinet. When I tried to track it in my head, it slipped away. So I stopped relying on memory. I wrote things down, dates, times, what I took and when, how I felt afterward. The pattern was subtle, but it was there. The days when I was most foggy lined up with the days Maribel described as hard. The days I felt clearer were the ones she seemed tense. At my next appointment, Dr. Frost mentioned increased agitation. I didn't argue. I asked one question instead. Can I see the notes from my last visit? There was a pause. Dr. Frost glanced at Maribel. We usually summarize those, Maribel said quickly. It's easier for him. Dr. Frost nodded. We can provide a copy if needed. I'd like that, I said. The room felt different after that. Not hostile, careful. On the way home, Maribel didn't speak until we were almost there. You don't trust me, she said finally. I'm just trying to understand what's happening to me, she sighed. This is what I was afraid of. That night, I checked my email. There were gaps. Threads I didn't remember deleting. Responses sent in my name that didn't sound like me. I stared at the screen, the weight of it settling in slowly. Either my memory was worse than I thought, or someone was making decisions for me and calling it care. For the first time, I didn't feel confused. I felt watched. I stopped correcting Maribel. Not all at once, just enough that she didn't notice the shift. When she spoke for me, I let her. When she described my day back to me, I nodded. I started saying okay instead of that's not right. The notebook stayed on the counter, but she opened it less often. The fog was still there, but something underneath it sharpened. I asked for my records the way she'd taught me to ask for things, politely, framed as concern. Redwood Valley Health Network had a patient portal I still had access to. It took longer than it should have, but I got in. What I saw didn't match what I remembered saying. Behavioral notes were detailed, specific, written in confident language. They described agitation, confusion, emotional dysregulation. They read like someone watching me from a distance, not someone listening to me speak. Some entries were signed by Dr. Frost. Others were submitted as caregiver observations. I didn't confront anyone. I downloaded everything. Next, I watched the medications. Not just what I took, but when Maribel refilled them. I checked the labels, the prescribing dates, the overlap. The fog made it hard to hold the numbers in my head, so I stopped trying. I wrote them down. I logged how I felt before and after each dose. The days I felt clearer weren't random. They lined up with missed or delayed doses. One afternoon, Maribel asked why I was writing so much. It helps me stay oriented, I said, using her word. She smiled, relieved. That's good. I scheduled an appointment on my own the next day. A capacity evaluation? Second opinion. I used my phone, my email, my insurance. No shared calendar, no explanation. The Cal Support Care Services didn't ask to speak to my caregiver first. That alone felt like oxygen. I didn't feel brave. I felt careful, like I was moving through a house where every floorboard could creak. That night, Maribel reminded me of my pills. I took them, and for the first time, I understood exactly why I was doing it. I needed her to keep believing I was manageable. Because the moment she thought she was losing control, everything would change. The next day, I waited until Maribel left for her weekly Pilates class. She kissed me goodbye, telling me not to forget my supplements, and reminding me Dr. Frost had called earlier. I nodded, watching her walk to the car, smiling the way she always did when she believed she was in control. I grabbed my phone and logged into the Cal Support Care Services portal. The appointment slots were open for that afternoon. I booked one under the pretense of a follow-up Dr. Frost recommended. Maribel would never question it. In her mind, it was routine care, supervised and harmless. When the ride arrived, I stepped outside. The sun was mild, the streets quiet. I didn't feel like I was running away. I felt like I was walking into clarity. The Cal Support Care Services felt different the moment I walked in. No one asked where my caregiver was. No one waited for someone else to answer. They spoke to me directly, used my name, gave me time. The evaluation took most of the morning. Questions at first, simple ones. Then longer conversations, tasks that required focus, memory, judgment. When I struggled, they asked why instead of writing it down and moving on. At one point, the clinician reviewed my medication list and paused. "Who manages these for you?" she asked. "My caregiver," I said. She nodded, made a note, and asked when I'd last taken each one. I answered honestly. When I wasn't sure, I said so. "No," one corrected me. By the end, I was exhausted but clear in a way I hadn't felt in months. The follow-up appointment happened a week later. Same room, same calm. "This isn't cognitive decline," the clinician said, sliding a report across the table. "Your impairment is medication-induced." She explained it carefully. Dosage stacking, chemical restraint, side effects mischaracterized as symptoms. The words were clinical, but the meaning landed hard. They had compared my records from Redwood Valley Health Network with the current prescriptions. The timeline didn't line up. "Without these medications," she said, "there's no evidence you lack decision-making capacity." I didn't feel relieved. I felt steady. They asked if I wanted the findings shared. "Yes," I said, in writing. On the way home, I didn't call Maribel. I didn't rehearse what I'd say. I just drove. That night, she told me Dr. Frost had called. "She's concerned," Maribel said. "You seemed distant last visit." I nodded. "I've been thinking a lot." She watched me carefully. "About what? About what happens next?" She smiled, slow and confident. "We'll figure it out together." I let her believe that, because the report was already complete. And for the first time, the story about me wasn't being written in her handwriting. After the report from the Cal Support Care Services, I realized this wasn't just about proving I wasn't foggy. It was about proving someone else was shaping my reality. I called a lawyer the next morning, someone experienced in dependent abuse and conservatorship disputes. She asked for every detail: medication schedules, pharmacy refills, Redwood Valley Health Network records, my own logs. I handed over every notebook, every email, every odd alert or unexplained notification. "It's clear someone's been misrepresenting your condition," she said, flipping through the files. "We can petition the court to remove your caregiver and flag this for investigation. But we have to be meticulous. Every claim backed by evidence." Back home, I found windows of opportunity. Maribel ran errands, called friends, or organized her own appointments. I used those gaps. My laptop stayed closed in plain view while she was home, but as soon as she left, I logged into my secure email and sent scanned copies of pharmacy notices, Redwood Valley records, and my own medication logs to my lawyer. The lawyer replied with questions and instructions. I answered in short, discreet messages. Sometimes I met her at a small cafe a few blocks away, pretending it was a casual coffee run. She helped me organize every detail without raising a single suspicion. Even when Maribel came home early, my notebooks and spreadsheets looked like nothing more than personal tracking. She didn't question it, and I didn't correct her assumptions. We spent days organizing everything. I didn't say much. My role was simple: provide the facts, stay composed, let the paper trail speak. My lawyer drafted the petition and compiled a binder with my independent evaluation report, medication discrepancies, logs of daily functioning versus Maribel's claims, pharmacy refill notices, email and text anomalies. Then came the official notices. Maribel received a summons for the hearing and a copy of the evaluation. Dr. Frost was subpoenaed to testify about prescriptions, behavioral notes, and her professional observations. Both had weeks to prepare. I practiced nothing. I didn't rehearse. My lawyer reminded me, "Your calm is your strength. Let the facts guide the process." On the day of the hearing, I walked into the Santa Clara County Superior Court, probate division, carrying my binder like a shield. Maribel entered behind me, confident as ever, nodding at Dr. Frost, who kept her gaze downward. The judge asked Maribel to summarize her petition. She painted the familiar picture: agitation, confusion, and inability to manage daily decisions. Every word was precise, rehearsed, intended to make me look incapable. When I handed over the report, the pages landed on the table like a quiet clap. My notes, the pharmacy alerts, the dosage discrepancies, everything aligned, each fact quietly contradicting her narrative. Maribel froze for just a moment. Dr. Frost shuffled her papers nervously. A clerk whispered to the judge. "Mr. Ashford, do you understand these findings?" the judge asked. "I do," I said, calm, measured. Maribel tried again, insisting I was still at risk, still fragile. Each time, the judge referred back to the evaluation. Each claim she made collided with evidence she couldn't dispute. Dr. Frost testified next. Her statements were factual, careful. She confirmed the medication adjustments and behavioral notes without defending Maribel's interpretations. Her professional neutrality had quietly shifted the balance. By the end of the hearing, Maribel's composure remained intact, but her confidence had eroded. She knew the guardianship would be denied. Worse, she realized a formal investigation for fraud and chemical restraint had already been flagged. Outside the courtroom, she tried a last-ditch charm. "We'll figure this out," she said, touching my arm lightly. I didn't respond. I just walked to the car, the binder still in my hands. For the first time in months, the story about me wasn't being written in someone else's handwriting. And for the first time, Maribel didn't know what would happen next. Maribel walked into the house that evening with the same calm I had once envied. Only now, I noticed the small tremor in her hands as she set down her bag. She glanced at the binder on the counter and froze for a fraction of a second, enough for me to see her confidence crack. She tried to speak first. I held up a hand. No words. Let her think she was still in charge. The phone rang. It was Redwood Valley Health Network, but the tone was clipped, official. Someone asked to speak with Maribel about Julian's records and prescriptions. They had reviewed the independent evaluation. They needed clarification on the discrepancies. Her eyes widened. I didn't move. I didn't speak. She stumbled through her words, trying to frame explanations, using her practiced calm. Each attempt faltered against the evidence Julian's lawyer had compiled. Then came a second call, the pharmacy. They had flagged the higher-than-prescribed dosages, and a compliance officer wanted an immediate report. Maribel's face went pale. The first cracks were showing. Her carefully constructed narrative was falling apart in real time. Dr. Frost came next. She had been subpoenaed, but before court, she called Maribel to clarify her own testimony. She didn't hesitate to be factual, precise, and neutral. But that neutrality felt like betrayal to Maribel. Every word, every confirmation, chipped away at the story Maribel had been controlling. By the next morning, emails were arriving from the lawyer, the court clerk, the hospital administration. Each one demanded explanations, documentation, or confirmation. Maribel tried to respond in the old way with charm, patience, and certainty, but it no longer worked. She cornered me in the kitchen, eyes sharp, voice measured. "You've made this difficult." I nodded once, silently. That was all I gave her. No argument, no explanation. The word "we" she had always used to pull me back into compliance now felt like mine to reverse. She realized too late that her attempts to control were now evidence against her. When the court date arrived, Maribel looked composed, but it was only surface level. Every confident gesture felt rehearsed. Every glance toward Dr. Frost betrayed worry. In the courtroom, as the judge reviewed the evaluation, medication logs and Julian's own careful records, Maribel's calm began to unravel visibly. By the end of the session, she wasn't defeated entirely, but she knew her control was gone. Guardianship denied. Fraud investigation opened. Her carefully built world, the one where Julian was helpless and dependent, was gone. The morning mail brought the first official letters. Redwood Valley Health Network had begun an internal audit triggered by the court findings and my lawyer's submission. A notice from the Santa Clara County District Attorney's Office followed soon after. A formal investigation into the misuse of my medications, falsified care reports, and chemical restraint. Maribel tried to maintain her usual calm when the compliance officer called, but even through the phone, I could hear it cracking. Every explanation she gave was challenged by official records, pharmacy alerts, and my own logs. Even Dr. Frost, previously quiet, provided statements confirming prescription changes and behavior notes. Neutral, factual, devastating. California law didn't treat her actions lightly. She faced civil penalties for falsifying medical records and misrepresenting care under California Health and Safety Code Section 1278. 5. Professional discipline, including a temporary suspension and review of her caregiver license. Potential criminal charges for elder and dependent abuse, as well as chemical restraint under Penal Code Section 368, and mandatory compliance and monitoring by the Department of Social Services. She tried bargaining, explaining, smiling. I didn't answer. My silence said more than any words could. The language she had used for months, we, our plan, returned to her as a mirror. It wasn't our plan. It was mine now. The week that followed, the notices continued. Meetings with auditors, official letters, appointment cancellations. Colleagues who had deferred to her suddenly treated her cautiously, formally, politely, like someone under scrutiny. Her authority evaporated quietly but completely. I didn't celebrate. I moved carefully, methodically. I took my medications on schedule, cooked my own meals, and reorganized my records. I visited the pharmacy myself, managing refills and notifications. I arranged my own appointments, spoke directly with doctors and nurses, and answered every question about my health without anyone filtering my words. Even the small things mattered. Opening my own mail, choosing my own meals, sending emails without oversight. Every little act felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that had been taken for months. Weeks later, I walked into Redwood Valley Health Network to collect my complete records. The staff greeted me with professional respect. Maribel wasn't there. Not in the office, not in the system. Her suspension was official, her credibility damaged, and the investigation ongoing. For the first time in years, my life belonged to me. Every decision, every moment, every action was mine alone. And I savored that quiet, precise freedom, knowing the reversal was complete.